this afternoon to the fourth in our continuing series of Manhattan Forum lectures, sponsored by St. Anthony of Padua Institute. I'm asked by our director, Cliff Price, to direct you to our website. If you haven't visited us, please do so. We're at www.sapi.com. And while you're there, look for the dot that says About Us, hit it, and go to the link to subscription. Read carefully the compelling arguments that are there given for your support, continuing support, of St. Anthony of Padua Institute, and act on it, please. We're very pleased to be able to present today John Médaille, a businessman, a student of Catholic social thought, lecturer at the University of Dallas, and an author on matters of business and the spirit. His book, The Vocation of Business, is the basis of some of his lectures at the University of Dallas. And another volume, Social Justice for Business Students, is appearing, I believe, from the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. Incidentally, if you don't know the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, I urge you to get acquainted. You can also find them on the web at www.isi.org. In his lectures at the University of Dallas, Professor Médaille defies ordinary academic custom by having his students read, among other things, the encyclicals Rerum Novarum, Laborem Exercens, Centesimus Annus, and Caritas in Veritate, which will be partly the subject of his lecture this afternoon. He approaches matters of economics in the tradition of distributism. That is, distributism, not distributivism, which Americans are inclined to say. The name most associated, of course, with that movement in economic analysis is G.K. Chesterton. Kindly welcome our speaker for this afternoon, Professor John Médaille.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? I've got a bunch of wires on here, so I just want to see if I'm hooked up to the grid, as it were. I would like to thank the Manhattan Forum and the St. Anthony of Padua Institute, and I would like to thank you all for being here tonight. Of course, they say that the attendance at any particular lecture in a lecture series is always a tribute to the last speaker. And I think so far there's been some excellent speakers here. Father Michael Sweeney on the talk on the common good and the laity, and then the next speaker applied those principles to marriage and the family, and I'm going to try to apply Father Sweeney's principles on the common good to questions of business and economics, without which neither the social order nor the family can survive. Now, the whole idea of the common good implies something that is shared, something that belongs to all of us. Now, this notion is obvious, and it's rooted in the fact that we are not truly individuals. Each of us is part of a we, rather than being just an I or an ego. Indeed, we owe our origins to a we. First of all, of course, to the divine we of the Trinity, but then to that ready-made community of the family, which calls each of us into being. And it is from that little society that we receive certain gifts, material gifts to be sure, such as food and warmth, but other gifts as well. Gifts of love, our first knowledge of moral standards, and gifts of language and culture. We are, from the beginning, dependent beings. This is obvious in the case of children, of course, but it is no less true for adults. In fact, it is more true, because as adults we have higher order needs and therefore higher order dependencies. Dependencies which require larger forms of community. Now, if we share our origins in the family and our ends in reunion with God, then it stands to reason that we must share some goals and some goods in between. The first thing we can note about both our origins and our ends is that both are gifts. Our being was not something that we bargained for, and our destiny is not something that we earn. Rather, both are free gifts. In his latest encyclical, Caritas in Veritate, Pope Benedict builds on this idea of the gift and does something rather remarkable with it. Benedict asserts that it is the gift, which he calls the principle of gratuitousness, that lies at the very heart of a practical consideration of business and economics. Now, the businessman and the economist might be forgiven if they regard such a claim with great skepticism. The one might consider it an intrusion into the world of science, while the other might simply grumble, "Excuse me, I am in business to make a profit." Yet, the reality of the gift cannot be ignored. For to ignore reality would be to disdain science. And if our very being is based in the gift, it is entirely possible that our business life is rooted in gifts, and that an understanding of the gratuitous nature of the world will help us to be better businessmen and women. Still, it is certainly not obvious, especially in our world, that this is so, and so we must examine this notion in some detail. We may start by understanding our lives in the context of a gift. And when we do so, we notice that there is a certain structure to life that is naturally centered around the gift. We first receive our gifts from the family. And then we want to put our own particular stamp on these gifts. And finally, we pass these gifts on to others. Now, all three parts are necessary. The reception of the gift as gift, the response in gratitude, and the passing on of the gift. It's a three-part process, and the first part consists in acknowledging what we have freely received and recognizing it, recognizing that we have not earned it. It was not an exchange. And until we acknowledge our being, our families, our language, our communities as gift, then we will never be able to respond in gratitude. We will remain as children, thinking that we are always due that which we have, and thinking likely that we are due more than we have, and thinking that we owe nothing to anybody, when in fact we owe everything to everybody.